Good afternoon. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive, and welcome to our Westchester Weekly Update. Today is Monday, January 9th. It's our second report of the new year, but we still want to wish you all a very happy and a healthy new year ahead. There's a lot of year ahead of us, and we're just really starting to roll again after the holiday season. Today we have a guest from our municipal officials program. I'm going to introduce him in just a couple of minutes. The town supervisor for the town of Rye, Gary Zuckerman, is with us here today. We're also going to get a report from Deborah Novick, who's our Director of Entrepreneurship and Innovation, about our Launch 1000 program, one of the innovative programs in economic development that's come under the direction of Bridget Gibbons, who's our Director of Economic Development. We're going to give you an update on the COVID situation, talk a little bit about a few other things that we think are helpful to you, talk about some of our appointees to the boards and commissions, and hopefully give you a little bit of information that you can work with. We have a program of inviting a variety of other elected officials to join us here for these updates. Our Municipal Partners Program has invited village mayors, town supervisors, and city mayors to join us on a rotational basis so that you have a chance to learn a little bit about what's happening in the local governments around Westchester County. In order for us to work in a cohesive fashion and an effective fashion, we have ongoing conversation, and the towns, the cities, the villages, and the counties have certain areas of common interest and certain areas where their responsibilities diverge. But we still try to have that dialogue and try to work through to resolve issues to the greatest extent possible. Today's guest is Gary Zuckerman, a longtime friend of mine. I've known him from his days as a member of the Rye Brook Village Board of Trustees. He's been involved in county government as one of the chief advisors to Mike Kaplowitz when Mike served as chairman of the Board of Legislators a number of years ago. And he's a lawyer of note and active in his community. And he is now serving, I believe, in his second term, completing his second term as town supervisor for the town of Rye. Town of Rye is an interesting community. It's not quite 50,000 people, 49,000 people. And it's comprised of three separate parts, each of which are fully within a village government. The village of Rye Brook, the village of Portchester, and a portion of the village of Mamaroneck. And what's interesting is that Rye Town is not a contiguous community, because once upon a time, what is now the city of Rye was the village of Rye within the town of Rye. I know this is confusing. And it became its own entity as the city of Rye. And once that happened, you have one part of the town of Rye here, two parts of the town of Rye there. It makes for an interesting challenge. And of course, Gary's been more than up to the challenge as he's worked through some of the different issues. So we invite him to come to the podium, talk to us a little bit. We're joined in the studio today by Deborah Reisman, who serves as town administrator for the town of Rye. I have represented parts of the town of Rye going back to the very beginning of my governmental career, and I'm in these communities all the time. Breakfast, dry cleaning, and normal services. So their good work in the town of Rye is something that I see almost every day of my life. So let me introduce the town supervisor, Gary Zuckerman. Mr. Supervisor, welcome. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. It's good to be here. You explained the geographical situation in the town of Rye better than almost anybody else has previously. It's a confusing melange for those who are uninitiated, even those who live in Westchester. The town of Rye, as the county executive mentioned, is comprised of several incorporated villages, and we are almost alone in that. There are no unincorporated parts of the town of Rye. Only the town of Pelham, to my knowledge, in the entire state of New York, is such a town. No unincorporated spaces, as places like town of Mamaroneck and town of Harrison have. Pardon me, not Harrison, town of Greenberg. Harrison is a town village. We do not have a police department. We do not have a fire department. We do not have a highway department, because the town depends for its services on our incorporated villages to provide those. However, we are busy. We do tax assessment and collection for all the villages and for 3 school districts: Blindbrook, Portchester, Rye Neck, and part of the village of Harrison. We collect almost $250 million a year in taxes for those entities, the villages and the school districts. Of course, we maintain the vital records, we assess taxes, and since the village of Portchester dissolved its justice court, we have probably the busiest justice court in the state of New York. We took that over from Portchester last year, and it's operating very smoothly, greatly enlarged, with the addition of several justices and clerks. We operate 2 large parks, Rye Town Park, which is actually physically located in the city of Rye and is operated jointly with all of our constituent communities and the city of Rye, and Crawford Park, located in Rybrook. We also own 4 cemeteries, including the African American Cemetery, which is an historic cemetery, and we own or co-own 7 bridges, which makes an interesting anomaly. One of the main things that we have tried to accomplish since I was elected in 2016 is to update our infrastructure, which was underinvested for many, many years. One of our goals is to make every facility in the town of Rye universally accessible to all of our residents, whether abled or disabled. To that extent, we have renovated the Crawford Mansion to make it into a community center, installing an elevator, as well as many other renovations. At Rye Town Park, we have installed new handicapped accessible ramps to replace ramps that were not only not handicap accessible, but were dangerous for even those fully abled people. We recently completed the replacement of the Hillside Avenue Bridge in the Rhinex section of the Village of Mamaroneck, together with the Village of Mamaroneck and the Town of Mamaroneck. It was a nearly $5 million project, for which we got about $3.5 million from the Bridge New York program. And I want to thank the county executive personally for coming up with money from the, I believe it was a county stormwater fund, to help defray the local cost of the improvement. We've also just launched a project to replace the South Barry Avenue Bridge over Otter Creek with a $4.5 million grant from the State of New York Bridge New York program. In addition to the physical improvements, we have embarked on a program for advanced communications and transparency. I think one of the benefits, actually, of the unfortunate COVID infestation was that it forced us to go into hybrid technology for our meetings, and we are on the forefront of making our meetings live streamed and accessible to members of the public, as well as to any members of our boards that are unfortunately unable to attend a meeting because of an emergency. We've also, part of our policy has been to introduce advanced sustainability measures. We've joined Energize New York. We're a climate smart community. We are one of the only, possibly the only town, certainly locally, that is completely electrified. We have no gas-powered vehicles at Crawford Park, and in fact, we have an electric truck on order, pickup truck, one of the new Ford F-150 Lightnings that you see sometimes advertised. We have diversity and inclusion programs. We celebrate cultural equity with gay pride celebrations, the African American cemetery renovation, Juneteenth commemorations, and we work very closely with the Friends of Crawford Park, the Friends of Rytown Park, and the Friends of the African American Cemetery to accomplish a lot of these purposes. One of the interesting things that we're doing is, in terms of sustainability, is to make our parks pollinator friendly. Many of you have heard perhaps that bees are disappearing, which could be catastrophic for the population of the world, actually. We have, in fact, our park director at Rytown Park is a beekeeper, and we collect honey every year. And we even make candles. I wouldn't say we, he does. We have many advanced programs in sustainability. We participate in cleanups. We organize cleanups through our sustainability committee throughout the communities making up the town of Rye and the city of Rye. And with all of that, our financial condition is very strong. We have a AA1 bond rating, which is the highest bond rating that we can achieve in a town of our size. And the average cost of your town tax in the town of Rye for a home valued at $600,000 is a grand total of $250 a year, which is, I would say, one of the lowest around when you compare it to other municipalities and school districts. And actually, that is an absolute true fact. I know everybody watching, $250 a year, but that's true. Anyway, I just want to thank you again, Mr. County Executive, and thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate it. Thank you very much, Gary Zuckerman, who is Town Supervisor of the Town of Rye. And, of course, the Town of Rye, as he pointed out, has some very defined responsibilities given the fact that every square inch of the town is governed by villages. But the work that's been done at Rytown Park, the work that's been done at Crawford Park is notable for its improvements, and the number of community events that go along with those two facilities are terrific, and we intend to partner with you on some additional projects in the future. So again, thank you for your time with us today, and as well to Debbie Reisner, who's with us here as Town Administrator. So we will continue to have in our Municipal Partners Program additional individuals who will come here and talk about their different municipalities. And then from time to time, we invite individuals in government at other levels of government. We'll have some state officials with us, state legislators. We've had some statewide officials join us here, members of the County Board of Legislators as certain issues arise, and some individuals from neighboring counties. So we hope to give you some of that insight into what's happening. Let me get into a couple of other areas that I wanted to touch on that we thought would be helpful to talk about. First of all, the COVID situation continues to be on our mind. You may know that we're about 2 months shy of the 3-year mark from when the first COVID cases were detected. Now, we all believe that COVID was in the body politic prior to that, but it was the first week of March where we detected the first Westchester case, and we were a bit surprised by it because it had been in Wuhan, China, in Lombardy, Italy. There was an outbreak in Kirkland, Washington, and then New Rochelle, New York, which was in our backyard, and we didn't quite expect that. But we had a great increase in the number of cases early on in 2020. We've now gone through a number of years, almost 3 full years, and I want to give you a sort of a perspective, and there's a grid that's going to come here to give you an idea of where we are today. There's been a lot of concern about the rise in COVID in the society. It always peaks up in the wintertime as a combination of cold weather outdoors, so you tend to spend more time indoors. And certainly during the holiday seasons, we have Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's that generally are times when people are in closer quarters indoors. In most cases, in those circumstances, people are together with others. And so that does help the virus spread a little more than it does in the summertime, springtime, and even the early fall. We're out of doors much more often, and the ability for the disease to spread is somewhat limited. In this grid, what you're looking at is a couple of key indicators, and it is true that the number of cases are up a little bit now over where they were a week ago or a month ago. But I want to give you the comparison of where we were on this date specific for this year, for a year ago, and for 2 years ago. So you have a sense of scope. The categories that we're tracking, active cases, those are the number of people that have tested positive within the last 10 days in the aggregate. And the reason why we have them as active cases is that the CDC identifies that it takes 10 days to ensure that everybody who tests positive for the disease is now over the disease, and they have, successfully fought the virus in their systems. So the number of active cases is the number of all the people that have tested positive in the aggregate over 10 days, and then when the 11th day comes, the people that were positive on the 10th prior day drop off the list, and new people are added. We have, at the last report, 3,028 active cases of coronavirus. Again, up a little bit over where it was in the last few weeks. But that compares 1 year ago to the day where we had 36,345 cases. That's a 12-fold increase. Now, you may recall that the Omicron variant came in mid to late December last year, and it was highly contagious, but it was not highly fatal. And what happened is a lot of folks who hadn't gotten the disease, and I was one of them, contracted COVID during that period of time, leading up to the holiday season and then after the holiday season into January. 2 years ago, in 2021, we had 10,238 active cases. Obviously not anywhere near what we had a year ago, but still 3 times the amount that we have today. So it's important to understand, even with the uptick, we are 1/3 of where we were 2 years ago and a fraction, 1/12 of where we were a year ago. Number of people hospitalized. People can contract COVID, but how sick do they get? And generally speaking, the people that are the most affected are those that require hospitalizations. For most of us, we have no symptoms. For most of the rest of us, we have some disease that lays us up for a couple of days at home, and we slowly get better, and we go through the 5 or the 10-day period, and then we're back to normal. For those who have to be hospitalized, it's a more severe matter. The most recent hospitalization number we have for this year is 263 people hospitalized. That's a significant number of people. How severely affected they are by the disease depends on the individual. But in the aggregate, they're in a hospital bed for a reason. That compares to a year ago, 627 people hospitalized, and 2 years ago, 489 people hospitalized. In both cases, this time, a year ago and 2 years ago, much worse hospitalization numbers. Now, look at infection rate. That's how many people, when tested, test positive. The current rate that we have is almost 11%, roughly meaning 1 out of every 9 people that test for COVID, 1 out of every 9 test positive. 8 out of 9, that'd be 89%, do not test positive for COVID. So far in excess of the number of people who do test positive, the number of people who test who are not positive. That's at 11%, 10.9% in the grid. A year ago, that number was more than double, 21.4. We don't have the accurate number for 2021. It was somewhere below what we had last year, so it was under 21%, but it was over 10%, probably in the mid-teens, I would guess. Now, what we have in terms of infection rate is not just how many people, but what percentage of the people that test positive. There is a factor that we can't calculate in the current numbers, and that's the number of people who are taking in-home tests and are not reporting it to any particular entity or agency. When we have tests that are given out by the Westchester County Health Clinic, by a hospital, by a doctor's office, those are all reportable numbers to the state of New York, which generate the numbers that we're talking about here. If you test at home and you act off of that test, you're either negative and you go back about your business, or you're positive and you stay home for a few days. If you don't report that, those numbers aren't in these. So there certainly could be a higher number of active cases, but hospitalizations are rigid because you're sick and you're going to one of our 11 hospitals, and so you physically show up, and that is a trackable number. And I think the proportion between the number of people that get infected versus the number of people that are affected to the degree of hospitalization is a significant situation. It shows that it is much less severe today than it was either a year or 2 years ago. Then, of course, the major event is number of fatalities. How many people have died from this disease? In the last week, we had 9 people die from this disease. In the comparable week a year ago, 47 people died from the disease, and in the comparable week 2 years ago, 38 people died from the disease. And that's an important indicator of how fatalities have dropped. In fact, when we give to percentages of fatalities, this is a percentage of all the people that contracted the disease up to the point of the date of the report. What was the fatality rate? Of everybody who had tested positive for COVID as of January of 21. This is a disease that started tracking in March of 20. By January of 21, 2.3% of all of the people who got COVID died from COVID. That number shrunk over the next year, and it shrunk because while more people were getting testing positive for COVID, there were vaccinations that made them more resistant to the worst effects of the disease. So within a year's time, by January of 22, we had 1.1% suffer fatality. So we had 2.3% of all the people. That number grew, but the number of fatalities did not grow in proportion to that. And we now are down to 1.1 fatality rate overall. And that number continued to drop so that the most recent number, January of 23, is 0.9%, 0.9. So down from 1.1. The COVID outbreak started March of 2020. The vaccinations began January to February of 2021. There were some vaccinations in late January. They became more widespread in February and started to grow from there. And that's in 2021, 2 years ago. The interesting element of fatality was how many people died in the first year of this outbreak before there was vaccinations. We have had 2,940 people in Westchester County die from COVID throughout the whole pandemic. We suffered our 2,000th death on February 11th, 2021, which was right about the time that vaccinations were coming to effect. We lost 2,000 people up to that point. Since that point, we have lost over a 2-year period of time with vaccinations in the marketplace, 940 individuals. Less than half of the number of people, or if you want to take the whole year pandemic to date, 1/3 of the fatalities that we've had have happened since vaccinations have come into play. 2/3 happened before vaccinations. There's clearly a correlation between the vaccination factor and the number of fatalities, and that's an important thing to understand. When we talk about hospitalizations, the peak hospitalization was right after the disease hit us. April 14th of 2020, we had 1,194 Westchester residents hospitalized for COVID. Now, we have about 2,700 hospital beds in this county amongst its 11 hospitals. We know that there are some hospitals near us, Greenwich Hospital, Danbury Hospital, that sometimes accommodates Westchester residents. At the same time, Westchester absorbs residents from Rockland and Putnam and other counties as well. So 44% of the total available beds at one point in time were occupied with COVID-related illness, hospitalization illness. But that's back in April of 2020. The current hospitalization number, we have 263 people. You saw that on the grid. That represents 9.7% of the total capacity of beds available to us. If you remember, when the disease originally struck in Wuhan and then particularly in Italy, in Lombardy, in the northern part of Italy, you had hospitals overflowing with cases. This happened again in some of the rural sections of the United States a little bit later on, areas that had a low level of vaccination. And when the disease came, it hit, and the local hospital, 200 beds in a rural environment, swamped with patients, even where they had more than that. So we have a high capacity to absorb in Westchester with 2,700 beds. The closest we ever came was 44%. That was good news because that meant we had the ability to treat the people. And now that 44% number of hospital beds is down to under 10%, which means we have the capacity to treat people when they get sick. We think that's very important. We have estimated the vaccination rates in Westchester to be 85% of the population that's eligible to be vaccinated. And the reason why I say estimated is that we don't know now whether we can track based on the number of shots that a person has had. Generally speaking, the original protocol was to have a shot and then 3 weeks later, 2 to 3, 4 weeks later, a second shot. That meant you were fully vaccinated. But then the booster concept has come along, and most people had a booster shot somewhere in the second year of having had the original shot. And then the bivalent boosters come along. That's overtaken having had a couple of boosters in between. Some folks have had 5 shots, a couple have had 6, some have gone by with 4, and the bivalent booster being sufficient to keep them safe. So without understanding what those numbers exactly mean, when we try to break it down, 85% of Westchester residents vaccinated. We made no vaccination mandate in Westchester County, not on our workforce, not in any other element of it. This is the response of Westchester residents who understood that this was a serious disease. We had lost a lot of people to this disease, and they responded with vaccinations. We're not here to argue the vaccination argument. There's a 15% cohort of the county, I presume, that for one reason or another won't be vaccinated. In some cases, there may be medical reasons not to be vaccinated. In many other cases, it's the decision of the individual for whatever reasons, philosophical, political, it doesn't matter what the reasons are, they choose not to be vaccinated. But 85% vaccination has gotten us a decreasing number of hospitalizations and a decreasing number of fatalities in the disease, and we think that's all very positive and good. We set that up so you get a parameter of it. This report that we're doing today began as a daily report during the heart of COVID almost 3 years ago. And we talked about what the numbers were daily. People were home, the businesses were shut down, and people were desperate to know information. The president of that day and the governor of that day had their reports, and I tried to provide the local take for you of what's happening here in your home county of Westchester. We scheduled our reports to fall at a time other than when the governor and the president spoke so that you could watch their reports and then watch our localized report. But we're now at a position where we understand that COVID is going to be with us. It is not going to be eradicated. There will not be a day when I say there are no positive tests for COVID. That's just not possible given the nature of the disease. On the other hand, we do very well to avoid becoming extreme in our thinking on either direction, thinking that this is over or that it is at a peak infection level, because we hear that it is on the rise. The fear is that it's on the rise. We need to go back to the period where we shut down the economy and everybody sort of stayed in their house all the time. We have not reached anything like that level, and that is what we're talking about by showing you these comparative numbers of where we were today versus where we were a year ago. 3,000 cases now. A year ago, we had 36,000 cases, so we need to understand that. By the same token, 3,000 cases is still 3,000 cases. We have one of our cohorts here, Peter McCart, who runs our sustainability programs, who came down with COVID for the third time just in the last few weeks. And he had a very severe case this time compared to the earlier cases that he has. I've been tested numerous times with COVID scares. I contracted the disease December a year ago. Had almost no impact to me. And subsequently, every time I have some kind of a cough or cold or something, you wind up going out and get tested again, or you do an in-home test. And so far, I haven't tested positive a second time. But that potential is there. And so with that, we now go into a mode of this is an important disease to be mindful of, but it is not the centralizing, organizing force of our society, where everything we do is focused around, do we do this or that, given COVID. And we have tried to strike that balance in the county as best as we can with our policies toward COVID and our policies in general. You may recall in that first spring of COVID, we shut down everything, but we kept open what we thought we could keep open on a healthy basis. So we did do bicycle Sundays, and we did have golf courses open, and you could walk through nature parks, but you couldn't shoot hoop at a basketball area because we felt that would represent too close contact during the period of time before we had vaccinations. And so we've tried to do that all the way through, and we've also tried to have the help of our health department to do a host of different things that keep us better protected. With that thought in mind, let me just announce that our county health department is offering the bivalent COVID-19 boosters for children ages 6 months to 3 years of age, in addition to all of those things that are available for older children and for adults. The county health department offers pediatric COVID-19 bivalent boosters by appointment on Fridays from 9 a.m. to 12 noon here in White Plains at our county clinic at 134 Court Street. You want to go online to our website, www.westchestergov.com/health. You can book your vaccine visit. And again, Fridays, 9 to 12 for those who are in that early age category, 6 months to 3 years of age. You can also get information about getting a COVID shot, booster shot at any age, but the general age shots are available in pharmacies and medical offices and a host of different areas now, not just through public health distribution. You may remember we had to shut down the county center to turn it into basically a medical facility so that we could mass vaccinate the demand that we have. And people do forget, A year ago, we had a rush for home testing. You may recall there were big, long lines. There was great frustration. I couldn't get a home test. I can't travel if I can't show that I don't have the disease. And some folks 2 years ago were particularly upset and nervous about whether or not they could get access to a vaccine. The vaccines weren't quite ready in early January of 21, but when they were available, they were given out by age cohort, and they had people that drove to the other end of the state to get a vaccination. All of these things are of recent memory, and it's important to remember that so you can put into perspective what we have today. The flu season is also here. And you can schedule flu shots as well through the county health department, through the clinic in White Plains. The flu activity is usually highest between December and February, but it can last into May. You may recall back in October, I had a double shot, flu shot in one arm, COVID shot, bivalent booster in the other arm. It had no negative effect having them both at once, kind of got them over both together, which was a good thing. And the flu vaccine helps, and the COVID vaccine helps, and we keep on punching. We want to keep going through all of this. The vaccine fully becomes effective after about 2 weeks on the flu area, so if you haven't been vaccinated for the flu and you intend to do that, call now, get the information now. Protect yourself as best as you can. These vaccines do not prevent you from getting the disease in its entirety, but they lessen the impact of the disease if you contract it. What they basically do from a layman's standpoint is they help you build up your antibodies and to strengthen it to then when the disease comes, your antibodies fight it off. When it's fighting off the disease, you get a fever, you wind up laying in bed for a day or 2 or 3, and you have all the different symptoms that come with some illness, but you're healthy, and in due time you get up and you go back and you resume your normal life, which is really what we want everybody to do. The federal government has made available to every resident 4 free COVID home tests. You can get that information by going on to covid.gov, G-O-V, federal government, make it available to you, or you can call 1-800-232-0233. 1-800-232-0233. You give them a call, give them your information. They will send you 4 free COVID home tests, which obviously can be used for any number of different settings. If you know you're going to be visiting an aged parent and you have a COVID test and you know whether or not you have exposure to the disease before you conduct that visit or whatever else it is, maybe before going to a particular event where a COVID test is required, you can get 4 free tests in that fashion. The county is continuing to provide, where we can, PPE, personal protective equipment, and COVID tests to local governments and other entities as possible. And if there are any questions, certainly you can give us a call. 995-2900 is our offices here. We'll connect you through the health department for any of these things. But COVID is with us, but at the same time, we're dealing with it. We think we're dealing with it well, the we being the society, not the government. And we're hopeful that as we get to the warmer weather, the infection levels drop further, the fatality rates drop further, the hospitalizations drop further, and we get through what we hope will be a very good and healthy New Year 2023. Next, I'd like to shift gears to talk about economic development. And with that, in a second, I'm going to ask Deborah Novick, who's our Director of Entrepreneurship and Innovation, to talk about the Launch 1000 program. Let me just say, and I've often said this many times before, so I give this as the same comment. I think Bridget Gibbons has heard this to the point of being able to mouth it with me when I'm sharing with it. But when I grew up in this county, economic development in the 1960s, when I was a preteen and teenager, was Westchester County getting major U.S. corporations to leave New York City, Midtown Manhattan or Lower Manhattan, and establish their corporate offices in the suburban camp environment of Westchester County. During that period of time, we attracted IBM and PepsiCo's world headquarters, 2 major multinational corporations here in Westchester County. We've had others over the years. Nestle USA was based here. We had a host of other entities of significant size and scope. As some of those companies have consolidated and moved out, we had General Foods here. We now have MasterCard with us here, headquartered here in Westchester County. We have USA operations for Heineken and Danone North America that are based here. And then, of course, Regeneron, which is a major U.S. biotech company that expanded and stayed right here in Westchester County. There are many other stories like that of companies large and small. Economic development was seen as going after the big fish and reeling them in. And for a certain period of time, that was the most successful business strategy we've ever seen. That is why 287 got built, because of the corporations that saw the potential to be here and to have transportation from one end of the county to the other. Things have changed. Small is the new big. And now what we're seeing is entrepreneurial efforts and actions by individuals building a company on their own, and then having 2, 3, 5 people work in that company, and then growing it to 25, and then if they're successful beyond that, to larger size companies. That is the growth area. And it's a more difficult challenge. It's not, here's a list of 5 corporations, go out and try to sell them and move into Westchester County. It's coming up with creative, innovative ideas that help those individuals who have the idea of what they can build into a business and help incent them in one shape or form or another. And because we've had people like Bridget Gibbons and Deborah Novick and others working on this, it is a bit of a trial and error effort. A new idea comes up, we try it, we see if it works. We see if this job fair works. We see if this outreach effort works. To the greater extent, we've had some good success. And I'm very proud of the innovations that this economic development team has worked with, knowing that we don't get the one big fish to come in, the major corporation that's going to open up operations. We have had Regeneron expanding. We've had Morgan expand their operations here with IDA assistance. But it's really the work of Deborah Novick that she's going to talk about now, Launch 1000, that we think represents the future. So without any other further ado, Deborah Novick, our Director of Entrepreneurship and Innovation, to talk about our Launch 1000 program. Deborah, thanks.
Thank you so much, County Executive. Really is a thrill to be able to tell you that we'll be able to offer Launch 1000 again. As the County Executive mentioned, we're planting a lot of seeds and hoping that many companies will thrive here and grow eventually to the size of Regeneron, some of them. So Launch 1000 is a program that we introduced in the height of the pandemic in 2020 as an entrepreneurial training program that allows people with an idea to figure out if it has legs. So we offer this program for free to help any Westchester resident who wants to learn how to create a new venture for themselves, to generate a new source of income and maybe wealth creation for them, for their family. And so far, 365 Westchester residents have done just that. In 2022, the year that just ended, 149 people completed the program, and that brings the total number, as I mentioned, to 365. These 149 launchers can be expected to generate 221 new jobs in the county and $333 million in revenue. And an independent analysis by an outside firm has determined that our investment in this program, our support of the program, returns $15 for every dollar we invest. So I think those are pretty good returns. A little bit more about this most recent crop of launchers. They ranged in age from 18 to their mid-70s. 78% were minorities, including 49% Black or African American and 17% Latino. Particularly proud of that because in the first year of the program we had only 7% Latinos, and we know that that's too small relative to their participation in our overall population. We offer the program in Spanish and English, and I'd love to continue to see more participation from the Hispanic community. This year, 80% were female, and only 20% were male, which was kind of surprising. In the first year of the program, that was a little bit more evenly split, 60-40. 63% of our participants last year had never launched a business before. And we do have participants who are launching a subsequent business. They've already been business owners. We have business owners whose business is stuck and they need some kind of a jump start to get it going again. Onto a growth path, but 63% had never launched a business before, and that means that this training that we're offering them is really so needed. It's something really new for them to absorb, and we're so thrilled to be able to offer it to them. More than half of the people who completed the program last year expect to generate revenue this year, and 20% expect to generate more than $50,000. So I think that's really a testament to the kinds of ideas that they're pursuing. So overall, adding the results from the most recent launchers to the first year's graduates, we anticipate revenue of over $6 million this year and an addition of 675 new jobs to the economy. So about the program for 2023, applications will open next week, and the program will begin in March. The sign-up list is open now, and I encourage everyone who thinks they might be interested to get onto that list right away. We will notify you as soon as the applications are open, and the link to sign up can be found at start.howtostartsomething.com/launch1000. A computer and stable Wi-Fi are required for the program, but we don't want anyone to be left out, and we make loaner laptops and Wi-Fi hotspots available. Also, technology training and any kind of social services support that you might need is available, so please don't let any life obstacles get in your way of participating if this is the time for you to pursue a new venture. So please help me spread the word about this program so that every single Westchester resident knows about it. It's free, and I need help with outreach, so I invite any organization, a business, a chamber of commerce, a professional association, a co-working space, a social services agency, a retirement group, a library, a landlord, a financial advisor, a guidance or a career counselor, anyone out there who has ideas that can help me spread the word to make sure everyone knows about it should please contact me with suggestions. And if you need flyers or posters or social media collateral, I have that available for you, and I'm also available to speak in person or virtually at any kind of an event where you think an audience might like to hear about the program. You can contact me directly at 914-995-2998, or you can email me at dnovick, that's Novick, at westchestergov.com to discuss or provide suggestions about outreach. So in summary, as of next week, any Westchester resident will be able to apply to the next cohort of Launch 1000. This is an idea accelerator that provides immersive, action-based learning. It's not a class, it's not a course, you're not getting a grade. You're getting out in the community with skills to test your idea with real live potential customers. And I encourage anyone who wants to apply, and to reiterate, the site to visit is start.howtostartsomething.com/launch1000. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Deborah Novick, Director of Entrepreneurship and Innovation and the Launch 1000 program. Thank you for your leadership on this, and thank you again to Bridget Gibbons, who's with us here today, for their work on that. Please inquire about it if you're interested in advancing an idea that you have and turning it into a business. We think we can be helpful to you in that regard. A couple other things to mention before we close out our report today. We have had a successful program of free rides, fare-free bus service here in Westchester County. Throughout the course of 2022, from June until Labor Day in the summertime, and then again for an 8-day period around Thanksgiving, and then finally for the 3-week period leading up to and right after the Christmas holiday season, we suspended fares on the Beeline bus system. In that period of time, it aggregated out to almost 4 months out of the 12 months of the year that you could ride the bus fare free. And over that course of the program, more than 1.7 million passengers rode the fixed route bus system, and that's a 10% increase in what our ridership has been for weekdays, excuse me, and for Saturdays compared to our average full ridership of a couple of years ago. Weekdays and Saturday ridership during the fare-free period reached 95% of the pre-pandemic numbers, and Sundays were closer to 90%. And when the pandemic came, and many of these public systems were shut down, we lost a certain amount of ridership. People were not comfortable going back into mass transit, and it was as much true, if not more so, in the New York City bus and subway system and in the Metro North system, commuter rail into New York City. All of those systems have been back up now for a while, but the ridership has not reached those levels. What we noticed, particularly watch the statistics in New York City, is that ridership came back faster on the weekends, which is primarily social use of the system, and in the city Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday midweeks, but not Monday and Friday, as Monday and Friday seem to be dates in which people were staying home and not commuting into the city or commuting across the city. But here in Westchester County, we've had a good lift in terms of how we've done with our bus system, and we're very hopeful about that. The free fares were also valid on our Beeline paratransit system that deals with people who have certain disabilities, and that is a system that requires a reservation in advance. And throughout the fare-free period, we had over 19,000 paratransit reservations made. I'm really pleased that people took advantage of this opportunity. People ask me all the time, "You're going to do it again in '23?" We're not sure. We want to look at the data a little bit more closely and determine what we can do. The benefit to the traveling public of the past year was about $2.8 million on the fixed route system and another $95,000 on paratransit. This is money that Westchester residents saved by having a fare-free system. And we're in a time of inflation. We're in a time of additional cost in society. People are complaining all the time. I go to the store, it costs me more money, this, that, and the other thing. So we provided a benefit by having this available free during this period of time, and for those people that use it and for those people that hadn't used it recently and were able to reintroduce themselves to it. It's not the only activity that we did to try to help deal with the inflationary moment, but it's interesting that we've done this, and there are no other systems that preceded us in doing this. I think the Ulster County system also became fare-free, or was somewhere after we had done our fare-free system. And now there's discussion about it across the board in a lot of other areas. So we'll see what happens going forward for '23, but for '22 we treated this as a successful effort, and we hope that we have more people on the buses because it is there as a public service. And it is, by the way, the second busiest bus system in New York State. New York City is obviously the #1 system, but the Westchester B-Line system carries more people every day than the Nassau County system, which is a bigger area than ours, than the Buffalo area transit, the Capital District area transit, which is Albany. No other place in the state other than New York City do we have as many riders as we do. And even with that, we're looking for ways to improve the system and get greater ridership. One of the other things that we've done to try to help people deal with the inflationary times is to suspend sales tax on home energy costs. And this program began December 1st. We are now in the second month of it in January. It will continue through a third month to February 28th. And what it means, very simply, is that when you have your home heated by natural gas, by propane gas, by electric, by oil, or for that matter by coal or wood, let's hope it's not coal, but when you purchase those products, you will not pay the county portion of sales tax on those products. And I've given you the general description. If you have a tank of 250 gallons of oil, and you get a full delivery of oil, if you assume that's about $6 a gallon for oil these days, maybe a little bit less depending on your circumstances. But that together represents a $1,500 expenditure for a full tank of oil, which will take you a month, maybe slightly more than a month, through the heart of the winter, depending on the temperature. We've been fortunate. We had a very bad weekend right before Christmas in temperature, but otherwise we've been surprisingly temperate for the winter, no major snowfalls as well. So at a full tank at $250, $6 a gallon, it's a $1,500 expense. You would normally pay 4% of sales tax to the county on top of that, which is another $60. That additional $60 is what you are not paying through the months of December, January, and February. And if it takes you 2, maybe 3 full tanks of oil to get you through the winter, purchasing that time could save you $120, $180, something like that. When you look at free bus fares, last summer we made a couple of our parking lots free during the summer for people who are commuting into the city. That arguably saved a commuter $150 to $200 a month in what would have been a commutation, the cost of parking for commutation. We have made sitting for civil service exams free over the course of last year. We took off some sales tax on the pump price at the gasoline pump. Prices did come down during the period of time in which we had done that, and we've done some other activities, all on top of cutting property taxes for property taxpayers for the last 3 years and now 4 years, which you'll be seeing the benefit of in 2023. All of those efforts is a way to acknowledge, yes, we're having economic issues in the society. We, the county government, cannot control the cost of, you go to the grocery store and buy a box of cereal, or you decide that you're going to purchase some other product or item that you need, and it's more expensive today than it was a year ago. We can't control all of those things, but what we can control in these parameters we have chosen to do, and the lifting of sales tax on home energy costs we know is important because the general cost of energy is going up. Con Edison has announced and NYSEG has announced additional rate increases. The oil companies who deliver the oil to your house, the propane, will tell you, costs have gone up, and there's a host of things. It's a national issue. It's a national economic issue. It's tied to some degree with the war in Ukraine and Russia's use of natural gas with European countries. There's a host of geopolitical reasons why these things are there. My purpose is not here to explain that, but it is to say what the county is doing about it, and we're happy that we could do that. Now, I do want to highlight that the 4% sales tax rate applies in all 19 towns, Rye Town's one of them, all 19 towns and in all 20 villages of Westchester County. The 4% lifting also applies in the cities of Rye City and Peekskill. There are 4 remaining municipalities in Westchester County. Those are the 4 largest cities: Yonkers, Mount Vernon, New Rochelle, and White Plains. And those 4 communities levy their own sales tax, and in so doing, that's 2.5% of what would otherwise be 4% county sales tax. So in those 4 cities, the lifting of the sales tax on home energy represents a 1.5% decrease, but you will still see some tax levied because it's city sales tax in those 4 cities. Everywhere else in the county, it's a different situation. Now, keep in mind, a lot of folks don't really know what municipality they live in because they go by their zip codes. And as Gary Zuckerman will be the first to tell you, it's the same zip code that covers 2 separate villages, Rybrook and Portchester. Mamaroneck Village has a zip code of 10543, but depending on where you live in Mamaroneck, depends on whether you live in the town of Rye or the town of Mamaroneck. And of course, we've just gone through the City of Rye, Town of Rye, Village of Rybrook, Michigas. So people sort of need to know their geography to know how this will affect them. But if you live in the 4 cities, it's a 1.5% improvement by lifting it, but not full lifting. It's a full 4% lifting outside of that in the 19 towns, the 20 villages, and the cities of Peekskill and Rye City. Well, we've done all of that, as we did with the fare buses, to try to give you a break during a difficult economic time. Let me close out with a couple more points. We have a weekly newsletter, electronic newsletter called My Westchester, and we distribute it every Thursday. Carolyn Fortino is the editor of that, one of our deputy directors of communications. She does a great job in that, and we want you to be a recipient of that newsletter. If you'd like more information, you can go on to our website at westchestergov.com, or you could send us an email at communications@westchestergov.com. Give us your email information, say you'd like to receive the My Westchester newsletter. We provide information about certain things, and in today's media outlet, most people seem to get their media information from the social media, which, depending on which thing you're reading, could be reliable or unreliable. The reading of the daily newspaper is very different today than it was when I was a young boy growing up. The local news departments in general are much more understaffed than they were. That includes the electronic media as well. They all do the best job they can, but the economics of the media is very different today than it was a number of years ago. So we want to provide you a newsletter that can give you information about Westchester County, and please, the My Westchester newsletter is there for you. westchestergov.com. You can visit it. There's a place for you to check in, or an email to communications@westchestergov.com. I want to close out by just mentioning, we said a few weeks ago that we invited people to express an interest in serving on one of our voluntary boards and commissions. There are 45 different boards and commissions in Westchester County government, and they range from planning board, health board, parks board, to advisory boards from ethnic organizations like African American Advisory Board, Hispanic Advisory Board, Asian American, and so forth. Service on these boards is a matter of public spiritedness, but it allows you to become involved in some area of public policy. So if you have an itch to scratch, if you believe that you want to see and get involved in some constructive way, this is a way to do it. Now, we've made this invitation before, and we invite you. You can send us an email, communications@westchestergov.com. You can go online, and there's a place for you to click on boards and commissions and submit information. But just to let you know, in the last month, which is the period of time at which all of the terms on these boards expire, December 31st each year. It's the ones that expire are then reauthorized. We've done the following appointments. I've made the following appointments. They're either reappointments or first-time initial appointments. To the County Youth Board, just in the last month, Ingram Taylor from the City of Rye was appointed, Dr. B.J. Mistry from Tarrytown, Jermaine Smith of Ossining, Terry Williams from Greenberg, and Dr. Alexandra Connolly from Yonkers were all appointed to the Youth Board. We have a council for seniors, and Susan Geffen of Armonk was appointed to that board. We have a Citizens Justice Advisory Board on criminal matters. John Eickemeyer of Eastchester was appointed to that board. The Arab American Advisory Board, Nabil Al-Ghazali was appointed to that board to serve. We have an EMS advisory board. James O'Connor of White Plains, Al Kim of Somers, David Raisin of Scarsdale, Jill Swanson of Tarrytown, and Joseph Barker of Yonkers were all appointed to service on that board. We have a board for a council. We have a council for people with disabilities, and Dylan Brown of Eastchester was appointed to that board. The African American Advisory Board, Ron Abad of White Plains and Barrett Stokes of New Rochelle was appointed to that board. The Women's Advisory Board, Iris Lachaux of Chappaqua was appointed to that board. We have a Refuse Disposal District Board, Jeff Coleman of Cortland, Ben Salanitro of the Village of Mamaroneck, Stefania Mignon from Yonkers, and George Montarella from Harrison were appointed to that. And that is just the last month of people who serve in these capacities. We're happy to do it. We think it's a great way to involve people in the government. There is no requirement other than basic willingness to serve. You have to swear an oath and provide some information, but there's no cost for you to do this. You get on the board if you're a good functioning member. You attend meetings. You participate. You bring your expertise to the table. Then you too are involved in county government, and it's not as much of a mystery to you as it might be on the outside looking in. So we encourage you to look at boards and commissions. We're happy to have you on it. We've really energized a lot of these groups from where they were in the past years, and we think that they provide a good advantage. Some of the programs and the services we've done, the new innovative programs, have come from recommendations from these boards and commissions. So I leave you with that as we close out the report today. Ken Jenkins is not with us today. He is on assignment for his responsibilities as chair of the state's redistricting committee. He has that responsibility appointed by Andrew Stewart Cousins, the majority leader of the New York State Senate. They have public hearings on their proposed plan in Buffalo and in Rochester, so he got away for a couple of days. Now, when people get away for a couple of days, you expect them this time of the year to be in Florida, Arizona, California, not in Buffalo and Rochester. So this is not much of a vacation for Ken, but we appreciate his public service in this area. Tomorrow, Governor Hochul will be giving her State of the State message in Albany, and I will be there along with a number of other of our senior executives, Joan McDonald, our Director of Operations, and others, to hear the governor's presentation and then to talk about what it means for us in governing Westchester County in light of our work with the state. So it is a new year. We have some of the same challenges that we faced before. We have some accomplishments that we're going to try to build on. Work closely with our Board of Legislators, work closely with our new state legislators, a number of whom have just started their tenure in office in the state and also with the federal government. We know that's been in a bit of a turmoil, but we work forward. We just try to do what we can do as effectively as we can. As most of you know, I have asked for and had passed a term limit proposition here in Westchester County. I have limited myself to 2 terms as county executive. That will follow for all my successors. This begins my 6th year out of what would be 8 full years if I have the good fortune to survive through that. And we have plenty more to accomplish, and I'm hopeful we'll have the energy to accomplish those things. So thank you for watching. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. Have a good day, have a safe week ahead, and we'll report back to you next Monday.